So hello, welcome to Filecoin Core Devs call number 77. Today, Thursday, 6th February 2025. It is just 12:03 p.m. on the Eastern Time. And we have a number of interesting things to cover today. Forgive me if I'm looking this way, that's where my screen is. We have reduced onboarding gas and align value accrual, the FIP discussion by Irene. And then we have incentivization of F3 discussion by Steve. And I think Steve would also do like an FYI discussion around the FRC for F3 parameter setting. Then we have NV25 planning and updates from Oran. And then I'll wrap that up with like housekeeping notices and closing. If there are other things anyone would like to talk about, feel free to leave them in the chat. And I can get to them if we have time, depending on how we do with timing. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Nina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I want to present this FIP that we are recently published. That is, so the aim of this FIP was to remove any constraints that we have today to use batching and proof aggregation for pre and proof commit methods. In order to be able to reduce the per sector gas that is used to onboard and provide better, gas optimization costs for providers, and also allowed for the network to grow more, because today we are actually constrained by onboarding gas. The network growth rate is physically constrained by the onboarding gas. And so first step for doing this was removing the batch balancer. Then the second step is the batch balancer was there for a motive. There is a motivation for having batch balancer. The main motivation was to try actually to create some balance in between how much we burn and how much the storage grows. And so removing batch balancer breaks this equilibrium. And so we try to bring it back, these balances, introducing a new per sector fee that has these extra new features respect to batch balancer to be simple to predict. So this new fee should simplify the prediction of the cost for storage provider and makes overall the economy more stable, the system overall more stable. And the third things that this FIP is proposing is eliminating some protocol at the protocol level, some constraints that was limiting limiting how much you can batch or aggregate in a sector. And this we can do today because we have better accounting than when these constraints were introduced. And in the second slide, I actually just, if we can switch to the other slide. I think I have another one. Yeah, thank you. So there is, this is what I just gave you is the overview of the FIP. So we can go a bit more in depth and how we actually did the changes that we proposed. In removing batch balancer, it means in details that we remove the batch fee that is today is applied at pre-commit methods and also all proof commit methods. So proof commit sector 3, non-interrupted POREP, and so on. And this means that if this fee gets accepted, batching and proof aggregation for any methods, any of these the onboarding methods that we have today will be always rational, and rational means cost effective. So it will not pay any additional fee. So you can batch as much or proof aggregate as much as you can without having to model or to think about the extra cost for doing that respect to the current value of base fee. As I said, the per fee that replace the batch balancer fee is a per sector fee that now is based. Now, sorry, it's paid for any sector that is onboarded. Does not depend at all on base fee. It does depend, is a constant fraction of the circulating supply. So it is something that should be very easy to model and to predict. Has a cap at 50% of block reward, just as a safety measure. And it's going to be paid in daily payments to avoid to be an upfront cost. We know that already today, like when you onboard the sector, you have a lot of cost at the beginning because of sealing is expensive and onboarding methods are more expensive than ongoing auditing methods as window post. So in order to avoid to have another, upfront cost, we split this fee in ongoing payments that are going to be paid daily at the same frequency of window post. And yeah, so and last, again, we remove this gas limited constraint to simplify the protocol and to, again, avoid any unwanted protocol limitation of the growth rate. If you want to know more, please go on the FIP that actually linked in the title. And we have also a FIP discussion, and we will love your feedback. And there is an appendix for knowing more about how we end up choosing this exact fee design. So we will love your feedback and happy to answer any question here or in the FIP discussion.
Thank you so much, Renee. Do we have questions or initial thoughts regarding this FIP and how it's moving along? Are there thoughts or questions from anyone? No? Okay. So over to you, Steve.
Great. Okay. Sounds good. I'll hit on a couple. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just reading your. I was just reading your question around timeline. So maybe Renee can take that.
Yeah, it was the question for me. Okay. The timeline is we would like having feedback as soon as possible because we would love to enter last call for this FIP by the 14th, right? I think it's the correct date. So it's basically in a week from now, because we'll if we can ship this FIP in the next network upgrade, it will be great because we can already provide this gas onboarding saving now, and we don't have to wait for unblocking the growth of the network and this gas optimization. So please help us to finalize and enter final call as soon as possible in a week.
Great. Thanks. Are there other questions? Okay, back to you, Steve.
Yeah, great. Going to talk on a couple of F3 things. So maybe your next slide. I don't have the slide deck, Lucky, but first I just want to talk about F3 delegated authority for parameter setting. So just reminding people where we're at. Obviously, there's been many months at this point working to get F3 live on mainnet, and we're at kind of the final stages here. We need to get the latest code deployed to all nodes on the network. And then we also need to finalize a set of parameters that those nodes will use. And by default, with our existing mechanisms, that would be actually 2 network upgrades. One to get the code in, then we need to do some passive testing on mainnet so we can make sure our parameters will work in the wild. And then we need to get those actually enacted on the network. Obviously the network upgrades take a decent amount of calendar time and people effort. And so we're trying to consolidate this down to 1 network upgrade, NV25 being the next, which is when all the code would go out. After that network upgrade, we would do the passive testing, which will take 1 or 2 weeks like we did with NV24. then all stakeholders and the community should be able to look at the metrics that were gathered, agree on the parameter set, and we'd like to enact that on all nodes, but again, ideally without doing a network upgrade. There's a proposal, there's an FRC right now, FRC 99, that outlines a proposal for avoiding that full network upgrade for setting the F3 activation parameters by instead delegating parameter setting to the Lotus, Forest, and Venus implementation teams, who will set these parameters using a multi-sig owned smart contract for a one-time use on mainnet. So all the details about the transparency and safety are discussed in that FRC. We certainly welcome any feedback on it. The key items here is that this mechanism can only be, instantiation of the mechanism can only be used once. Once F3 activates, this contract is locked and can't be updated. And again, because of the multi-stakeholder ownership, the parameter setting requires explicit participation and agreement by the Lotus, Forest, and Venus teams. So again, there's not one party in charge here. And the smart contract also requires delay between when all these parameters get set and when it gets enacted so that the community can see it and there's an opportunity to bail out if for some reason things were set incorrectly or there's controversy about it. So that's all in FRC 99, which is open for pull request right now. And the implementation teams are on board with that. And we're gathered. That's where also you'll be able to see and check the public keys that are being used for this for the ownership of the contract. Any questions on that? Okie doke. Well, please feel free to look at the FRC PR, and we again happily take any questions or feedback and engage with it there. So that's all about getting F3 activated on mainnet, which will be great. Again, like I said, many months of effort to get to this point. But that's not the end of the F3 story, right? We think F3 is an important infrastructure piece, unlocking significant potential for the Filecoin network. To guarantee its correct functioning, though, high participation is really important. And so we believe that calls for an adaptation of the reward mechanism design. We believe that the network should directly reward participation in the F3 protocol and reduce the risk of incentive misalignments. So there is a FIP discussion right now, FIP discussion, I believe 110, that is proposing to adjust the way mining rewards are earned, where up to 10% of the rewards would be tied to participation in F3, verified through evidence in the finality certificate. So a couple key callouts here that in that proposal is that the total rewards available to SPs remains unchanged. And so it's still ensuring that participants can earn the same overall amount. And there are adaptations that are suggested to enhance inclusivity and mitigate free riding risks. So that is being proposed and discussed right now in FIP Discussion 110. It includes both the technical and economic details, which complement each other. But the next steps are to actually write the FIP, which will be getting going on later on in this month. And the hope is, again, that F3 gets activated shortly after NV25, and that we can iron out the details about the incentivization here over the next couple months, and that we could actually do the implementation, really locking in F3 here, making it incentivized as part of NV26. So that's what we're looking at. Obviously, there's details to iron out and certainly feedback from the community yet, but that's what's being considered.
Thanks, Dave, for the overview. I'll also include, I think some of the FIPs and discussions are already referenced in the chat box. I would also pass that around after the call. Do we have any questions for the two F3 topics? No. Okay, Oren, over to you.
Yeah. Hey everyone. So with both these FIPs in mind, we have taken a view at NV25 planning and see how we can map that to different dates. So in this table, we do have two different scenarios where either F3 goes solo, where the onboarding fees FIP doesn't enter into last call, and we do also have a scenario where F3 and onboarding fees is together in this NV25 timeline. So on the F3 side, there was also a decision to introduce a little bit more of testing on the butterfly network, basically scaling it up and ensuring that we test it on a large enough scale so that when F3 comes to mainnet in NV25, we are sure that it can be activated in NV25. So for dates, we are down to line number 4 or 5 something, where we are basically in around like February 14th, as Irene said, is the hope for onboarding fees FIP to enter last call. And we view this date as like the cutoff date. If onboarding fees can't enter into last call before or at this date, then we basically move on to a NV25 train that has F3 as the main driver for NV25. So in the F3 solo NV25 timeline, we are at a mainnet upgrade around like March 18th. But with both F3 and onboarding fees FIP, we estimate that a mainnet upgrade can be had around like March 27th. So yeah, those are, I think there is some uncertainty around like, there is some risk, I would say, around the actor code free state. All the implementers has been engaged in looking at the onboarding fees FIP to estimate a little bit better, so we can get a better like timeline for a F3 and onboarding fees NV25 timeline, but that is the current dates that we do have for now. I don't know if there's like any questions around this timeline.
Sounds like it's straightforward, I guess. Okay. So I started a discussion last week. I think this is the last item for discussion for us. It's really around how we restructure core devs to make it more beneficial to all of us. So again, I don't want us to view this as like a governance forum or where we like enforce decisions as such, but it's more or less thinking of it as a technical think tank, where we all discuss and brainstorm technical challenges and innovation. So I think it's important we continue to refine the group and make it, scalable and efficient, because personally, I think it's very useful. However, obviously, I've had a couple of questions in terms of overlap between core devs and then the implementer working group. So I think it's important we clearly disambiguate what these two groups are for. And so there is no confusion between like, okay, do I attend this and not the other one? But I think it all comes down to, what should we be focusing on as core devs? How do we define, what it means to be a core dev? And then when we do that, we are inadvertently also going a step further by differentiating it from the implementer working group. I think the answer is pretty much obvious, but I think it's important we document this and make it public so everyone can see what are the key questions we're answering in the core devs group and what are the key questions that implementers are answering there, so that it's open and public and everyone can see the differences. But more importantly, from my perspective, it's also thinking around how can we structure these meetings to make them more useful to you. Obviously, people are very busy and there are lots of meetings. So we don't have to continue using the same pattern that we've always used, but we're open to feedback in terms of restructuring the timing, the structure, the content, the participation. So a couple of you already started dropping your thoughts and comments. Thank you. I'm just giving it a bit of time for folks to settle in and sort of share their thoughts. But also if there are a few thoughts or comments on this call. Since we have a bit of time, I'm also open to us talking about this topic, and so that we can have a plan of action in terms of slowly, refining this group. Yeah, so I wanted to just start this. So if anyone wants to jump in, you're more than welcome to do so. Yes, Molly.
I haven't written up my thoughts yet, so apologies for not having yet externalized them, but I'll give you what's like top of mind for me as we're thinking about how this venue can be useful. I think the implementers working group is very useful for keeping the implementation, the core, the multiple different clients we have that are maintaining sync in the network, and a number of the critical tools that integrate heavily with that, like SP tooling, explorers, things like that, in sync as changes are being made. Some of those are consensus critical changes like network upgrades. Some of those are just, interface changes or FRCs or other things that don't necessarily flow through the network upgrade process. But I think that is a very useful and like actionable forum for working in alignment, and should be maintained. And kind of that group of implementers is a broader set that includes, say, the implementation teams for each of Lotus, Venus, Forest, Curio, and a number of others. My vantage point is that the core devs is more of a stakeholder representative group that includes representation from those implementer teams, but also includes representation from teams that aren't necessarily implementers, that have different visibility from a design and development perspective across other aspects. So it's kind of like an expert body that includes a DRI for each critical area of expertise that needs to be incorporated into, say, network upgrade, FIP review, etc. And really, core dev should be being involved in, exactly as Irene was doing here, reviewing critical new FIPs, offering feedback, being involved in technical review and moving things to last call and things like that. But it's also like talking about upgrade trajectories, and synthesizing perspectives across different areas of stakeholder visibility, whereas the implementers working group should probably correctly be a little bit more tactical on what are the things that we need to do to actually execute on that vision or that trajectory and stay in sync across these different groups at a more granular level. And core devs does have some amount of a governance role when it comes to, say, security incidents. And that's a little interesting because I don't know how much core devs as a group today are looped into, some of that actually might happen at more the client level of patching a Go bug or something across implementations that, only a subset would rise to the core dev level. But that's my vantage point, is this is a valuable space for discussing prospective proposals and synthesizing feedback, and that we can then shrink the number of people that are expected to come to this area, but that DRIs that are taking stakeholdership for an area have a more unique perspective that they are contributing and making sure is synthesized into the overall upgrade path.
Interesting. Thanks, Molly. Are there additional thoughts?
I think if the core devs group are gonna have more in-depth discussions around FIPS, it would be good to have reading material, I think, beforehand the meetings, because it is very hard to get a presentation of a FIP. It's a lot to digest, and without a proper, either start a meeting by reading the actual FIP itself, then presentation, then questions could be a better format. I know it is a lot of meetings. It is a lot of, like, people have a lot to do, but yeah, I think that could be beneficial for making the productions and or these calls more productive and have more questions and answers.
Mhm. That's a good idea, Oren. Additional thoughts? I mean, you can always join the conversation async or using the GitHub. But it sounds like the core devs is something we have to continue to develop and make efficient and as we go. But obviously, there is an interest to continue to keep these conversations and this group going. But if you have other thoughts or questions, I can take them. Otherwise, you can drop your thoughts in the Slack channel or in the GitHub discussion thread. Okie dokie. All right. Thank you, everyone. It was interesting, again, seeing all of you and also hearing about all of the work going on. I wish you all a lovely rest of your week and see you all next month. Bye.